a large city's outskirts, in a neighborhood where old brick houses stood alongside abandoned lots, lived a 12-year-old black boy named Jayden. Life had not been easy for him, but despite the hardships, he had a kind heart and an unshakable belief in justice. Jayden lived with his mother and younger sister in a small apartment where the thin walls barely kept out the winter cold. His mother worked 2 jobs to support the family, leaving little time to spend with her children. Jayden often acted as both a brother and protector for his sister. He was no stranger to racial injustice and social inequality. Walking the streets, he often heard people talk about how kids like him would never amount to anything. But Jayden believed otherwise. He dreamed of changing not just his life, but the lives of those around him. That evening started like any other. Jayden was walking home from school, carrying his old, worn-out backpack that had served him for years. The sun was beginning to set, and a chilly wind cut through the air. To save time, he decided to take a shortcut through the city park. The path wasn't the safest, especially for a boy from his neighborhood, but Jayden knew the park well and wasn't afraid. Suddenly, a piercing scream broke the silence. It was a woman's voice, filled with pain and fear. Jayden froze in place, his heart pounding. "Help. Please." The voice was faint, but urgent enough for Jayden to know that someone was in trouble. Without hesitation, he ran toward the sound, not thinking about what danger might await. Moments later, he found a woman sitting on the ground next to a wrecked car that had crashed into a tree. Her face was contorted in pain, and her hands trembled. She was visibly pregnant, her swollen belly making it clear she was in a fragile state. "Are you okay?" Jayden asked as he approached. The woman struggled to speak, her breathing labored and her eyes wide with panic. "Help! I can't move! The baby!" she whispered, her voice shaking. Jayden quickly assessed the situation. The car looked like it had been hit at full speed, and the driver had fled. The woman was pinned between the car's seat and dashboard. Jayden knew there wasn't much time. She could lose consciousness, or worse, her baby's life could be at risk. "Don't worry, I'll get you out," Jayden said, trying to sound confident despite his fear. He tried to open the car door, but it was stuck. Gathering all his strength, he yanked on the door, his hands aching from the effort. After several attempts, he managed to pry it open. Carefully, he helped the woman out of the car and laid her on the ground, using his jacket to cushion her head. "You're going to be okay. Just hang on," he reassured her. "Please, call an ambulance," she murmured. Jayden pulled out his old phone, but there was no signal in this part of the park. Looking around, he saw streetlights glowing in the distance, marking the road that led to the nearest hospital. "There's no signal here. I'll run and get help," he said, and without waiting for her response, sprinted toward the hospital. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, ignoring the burning in his chest and the ache in his feet. His thoughts raced. Asterisk, I have to make it. She could die. The baby could die. Within minutes, Jayden burst into the hospital, gasping for breath. "Help! A woman's been in an accident. She's pregnant. Please, hurry!" he shouted. The staff immediately sprang into action, dispatching an ambulance to the park. Jayden, despite his exhaustion, ran back to the scene to ensure the woman was not left alone. When the ambulance arrived and the paramedics began treating her, Jayden finally allowed himself to breathe a sigh of relief. That day marked a turning point in Jayden's life. He had acted with courage and determination that most adults might struggle to muster. Though he didn't yet know who the woman was, his selfless act had already begun to set extraordinary events in motion. A few days after the incident, Jayden sat at the small table in his modest apartment, trying to concentrate on his homework. Yet his mind kept drifting back to the woman he had helped. Was she okay? Had the baby survived? The questions weighed on him, but he kept them to himself. His mother, noticing his distraction, wanted to ask what was on his mind, but knew Jayden wasn't one to share his worries easily. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in a grand mansion nestled in an affluent neighborhood, millionaire Matthew Wallace was trying to process what had happened. His wife, Sarah, had told him about the young black boy who had saved her life. "He was so brave, Matthew," Sarah said, lying in her hospital bed, all alone, in the middle of that park. "He didn't even hesitate. If it weren't for him, I don't even want to think about what could have happened." Her words struck a deep chord in Matthew. As a successful businessman, he was used to solving problems with money, but this time, he realized how close he had come to losing his wife and unborn child. "I have to find him," Matthew said firmly. The next day, with the help of his driver and assistant, Matthew began searching for the boy. Hospital staff remembered Jayden clearly, the boy who had run in yelling for help. It didn't take long for them to trace him to the modest apartment complex where he lived. When Matthew arrived at the address, the stark contrast between Jayden's neighborhood and his own was striking. The streets were cracked, the houses worn down, and children played outside with makeshift toys. It was a far cry from the manicured lawns and pristine sidewalks Matthew was accustomed to. Standing at the door, Matthew adjusted his suit nervously before knocking. The door creaked open, and Jayden's mother appeared, startled to see a tall, well-dressed man accompanied by a woman and a security guard. "Good evening. I hope I'm not disturbing you," Matthew began, removing his hat. "I'm looking for Jayden. Are you his mother?" She nodded hesitantly, unsure of what this unexpected visit could mean. "Mom, it's him," came Jayden's voice from behind her. He stepped into view and immediately recognized Sarah, now looking much healthier. "It's you," Jayden said, his face lighting up with relief. "Are you okay?" Sarah smiled warmly and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Thanks to you, yes," she said softly. "You saved my life and my baby's life. We came here to thank you properly." Matthew stepped forward, extending his hand. "Jayden, my name is Matthew Wallace. You don't know me, but I owe you more than words can express. You did something that many adults wouldn't have the courage to do. You saved my family, and I want to repay you. Please tell me, what do you want? Anything at all." Jayden looked down, shuffling his feet. He wasn't used to receiving praise, especially from someone like Matthew. "I don't know, sir," he said quietly. Matthew pressed further, determined to show his gratitude. "Money? Education? A new house? Name it, and it's yours," he said, his tone earnest. Jayden shook his head. "I don't want any of that," he replied, his voice steady but hesitant. Matthew was taken aback. "Then what do you want?" he asked, genuinely curious. Jayden paused, gathering his thoughts before finally speaking. "I have one request." The room fell silent as Jayden prepared to speak. It felt as though even the faint sounds from the street had hushed, waiting to hear what this remarkable boy had to say. "There's a school in our neighborhood, sir," Jayden began, his voice steady but soft. "It's old. The roof leaks when it rains, and in winter it's so cold we have to wear our jackets in class. The teachers bring their own heaters, but sometimes the power goes out because the wiring is bad. We don't have enough books, and some of the desks are so broken they're unsafe to use." He paused for a moment, glancing up at Matthew, who was listening intently. Jayden took a deep breath and continued. "All I ask is that you help fix our school so that the kids in my neighborhood can have a better chance. Not just me, but my friends too." His words were simple but carried an extraordinary weight. Jayden could have asked for anything: money, a new home, a chance to escape his circumstances. Yet he chose to think of others, of the community that had shaped him and the kids who deserved a brighter future. Matthew was stunned. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. His wife Sarah sat beside him, her hand covering her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. She had expected the boy to ask for something for himself, but instead, he had shown a maturity and selflessness that moved her deeply. "Are you sure that's all you want?" Matthew finally asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Yes, sir," Jayden replied firmly. "I have what I need: my mom, my sister, and my friends. But if our school stays the way it is, a lot of kids won't make it. I want us to have a chance." Matthew took a deep breath, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He had met countless people in his life, executives, politicians, business leaders, but none of them had inspired him the way this boy did. "Jayden," Matthew began, his voice shaking slightly, "you have reminded me of something I had forgotten, that real strength lies in thinking of others. I promise you this. I will not only fix your school, but I will make it the best it can be." Jayden's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really?" he asked, his voice filled with hope. "Really," Matthew said with a smile. "But I'll need your help. I want you to be part of this. You'll tell me what the kids need and how we can make things better. This is your project as much as mine." Jayden hesitated for a moment, unsure if he was dreaming. But when Matthew extended his hand, he shook it firmly. "Thank you, sir," Jayden said, his face lighting up with a smile. "Thank you so much." Matthew smiled back, but inside, he felt a deep sense of humility. This boy, with so little, had taught him a lesson more valuable than any he had learned in boardrooms or business schools. As they finalized their plans, Matthew knew this was only the beginning of something far greater than himself or his wealth. A few months later, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The once crumbling school in Jayden's neighborhood now stood as a beacon of hope. Gone were the leaking roofs and broken desks. In their place was a fully renovated building with fresh paint, large windows, and bright classrooms filled with new desks, books, and modern technology. The school now had heating and cooling systems, an up-to-date library, and even a gymnasium, a luxury that had once seemed unattainable for the students in the area. The playground had been redesigned with new equipment, giving the kids a safe and joyful space to play. Jayden had been involved every step of the way. Matthew had kept his promise to let him contribute, consulting him on what the children needed most. Jayden took the role seriously, speaking with his teachers and classmates to gather their thoughts. He worked closely with the architects and planners, his input helping shape a school that truly served the community. Finally, the day of the grand reopening arrived. The entire neighborhood gathered outside the school, buzzing with excitement. For many, this was more than just a renovated building. It was a symbol of hope and change, a testament to what could happen when someone cared enough to make a difference. Matthew Wallace stood at the front, microphone in hand. Beside him were his wife Sarah and Jayden, who looked both nervous and proud as the crowd cheered for him. "Today is a special day," Matthew began, his voice carrying over the crowd. "We're not just celebrating the opening of this school. We're celebrating the courage and kindness of one extraordinary boy." He turned to Jayden, gesturing for him to step forward. "This young man didn't just save my wife and child, he reminded me of what it means to give back. He could have asked for anything, but he asked for something that would benefit not just himself, but his entire community." The crowd erupted into applause, many wiping away tears. Jayden, now standing at the microphone, glanced nervously at the sea of faces. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "I want to thank Mr. Wallace and everyone who made this happen," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "But this school isn't just about me. It's about all of us, my friends, my teachers, my neighbors. This is proof that no matter where we come from, we deserve a chance to succeed." His words were met with a thunderous ovation. People shouted his name, celebrating not just the new school, but the spirit of the boy who had made it all possible. As the ceremony wound down and the crowd began exploring the renovated school, Matthew pulled Jayden aside. "You've done something incredible, Jayden," he said, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Not just for your school, but for all of us. You've reminded me of what truly matters." Jayden smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "Thank you, sir. But this isn't just about me. It's about everyone who believed we could make this happen." Matthew nodded, deeply moved by the boy's humility. "Still, if you ever need anything at all, you let me know," Matthew said earnestly. Jayden grinned. "I already have everything I need," he replied. In the weeks and months that followed, the story of Jayden and the transformed school spread far and wide. News outlets picked up the tale, highlighting the extraordinary kindness of a young boy who thought not of himself but of others. For the children of the neighborhood, the school became a source of pride and opportunity. Attendance rates soared, and the students' achievements began to reflect the new environment they had been given. For Matthew Wallace, the experience was life-changing. He continued to invest in other schools and communities, inspired by Jayden's example. And for Jayden, this was just the beginning. The boy who had saved a stranger's life and asked for nothing in return had become a symbol of hope, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples of change that reached far beyond what anyone could imagine.